Journalist, broadcaster, author, agony aunt, Booker Prize judge, mother of two.
Underachiever.
And friend of the show. She's also just written a new book all about the menopause. Mariella Frostrup joins us now. Hi, Mariella.
Hello to my favourite lady team. How are you? I can't believe where you dredged up that photograph from. And I was literally about 5 years old. Just had a lot of makeup on. But I just want to say, before you asked me about the book, that you were talking about Googling a minute ago. My dear co-author, Alice, was temporarily suspended from Twitter for using the word vagina. And it's very easy to end up using that word when you've written a book about the menopause. Can you believe it? Literally 24 hours suspension. When you think of the amount of rubbish that you can find, via social media. We were so shocked.
That's one of those things that is funny but not funny. It really...
It's a bit like, I also noted you were talking about this report today, this police report about violence to women. And, you were talking about stranger danger, but actually the biggest threat to most women is not stranger danger. That's the terrible thing. It's about violence in the home. 1 in 3 women is killed. One woman every 3 days is killed by her own partner. So, as you said, Kate, it's not an easy thing to change, but it's the culture that just has to change. That's got to be unacceptable. Like Jane said, if you make a call going, I feel like I'm in danger here, the police have to take you seriously.
Well, you're right, it's a cultural change, and sadly these things never happen quickly, but you have to start somewhere. Coming to the menopause and the subject of your book, cracking the menopause. Lovely, wasn't it nice? But that's another culture that we have to change, and you're very much part of that, Mariella, in that, going back not so long, maybe 5 years ago, we started talking about it on the show, 5 years ago, something like that? Yeah. But, there was a cultural sort of resistance to women even associating themselves with the menopause, wasn't there?
It's so fascinating. Like, I talked to friends of mine who worked for women's magazines and things, and they were, one of them in particular was banned. They were banned from using the word menopause at the magazine. But what I love are, I've just got to quote you a couple of these because they just make me laugh. Because when we set out to write the book, the thing I really wanted to address was all the mythology around the menopause, the fact that it's presented as the most terrifying thing that'll ever happen in your life, and you probably won't survive it, or at least if you do, then you won't be fit for human consumption. And you wonder where that came from. And you've got classical times, Aristotle, that great philosopher, he basically said that women were the wrong temperature, and that's why we had periods. We had to let all that toxic blood out in order to become the right temperature. Men, obviously perfect. Medieval times, Albertus Magnus, a genius, who says women are packed with poison and can kill children with just a stare when they're menopausal. And then you get to the 19th century, and basically anyone with a womb that is no longer functioning as it should, i.e. producing children, is repulsive, insane, and also repulsively lustful after men. You wonder where we got today's impression about the menopause, and you just have to look to the history of it and just think, this is crazy. The menopause has been diagnosed by the only people who don't get or have a menopause.
Although I must say that quote you said about, killing somebody with a stare or whatever, I think my husband would identify with that. One of my main symptoms was just a complete, even more intolerance than I normally have of everything. How did your lovely husband, Jason, deal with you going through the menopause?
I'd love to describe how he describes the experience of living with me through the menopause, but I couldn't because we're on television, and I'd probably, you'd have to do the same as Twitter did to my co-author Alice and just cut me out. It's full of expletives, let me tell you. But I think, partly people's attitudes to how we are during menopause are formed by past history, and that's why one of the most important things is to dispel the mythology around it and actually look at what it really is. Menopause just means one thing. It means it's been 12 months since you last had a period, and actually the period of time that we really need to be focusing on, and I learned so much in the course of writing this book. I was you know, definitely walked into it blindly, which was to my eternal shame. But it's the 10 years before the menopause that we really need to be looking at, because that is when most of the harm is done in terms of, you know, developing osteoporosis, in terms of increased risk of heart disease, all of the things that afflict women unless we deal with the catastrophic, you know, drop in our hormones. And you know, it's still treated like we're at the very beginnings of medicine when it comes to menopause.
But Mariella, isn't it remarkable, really, when you said you've learned a lot in the process of making this book? I mean, we would all like to think that we're mildly intelligent women with 3 brain cells each or whatever, but the level of ignorance I now have to appreciate that I had about, you know, this kind of biological stage of life that's never been a secret, I actually felt quite ashamed of myself. I mean...
You know, it's no surprise, though, that we don't know very much about it, because one of the really bad things, particularly in this country, is the sort of lottery when it comes to treatment for menopause. And for so many women, it entirely depends where you live, who your GP is, whether or not they've actually looked into menopause, you know, in terms of how you're going to be supported through it. And that's the absolute disgrace. You know, it's not even mandatory as a topic of its own in terms of medical training. You know, I mean, we are in the dark ages, seriously, and yet it's going to affect 50% of the population. If men got the menopause, we would not be in this situation.
Well, listen, we're all about information, and we did ask our audience if they would have some questions for you, Mariella, and we were absolutely inundated, I have to say. I'm going to hand over to Frankie, actually, with the first question, because, of course, this is all uncharted territory for you.
Yeah, this is all still to come for me. But I do feel like, being around all the ladies, I've learnt so much already. I'm going to go in fully armed. But Dawn has asked, which is a question that I often wonder about, actually. How do you know if you're starting the menopause, and when should you approach your doctor?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I was one of those people who didn't even realise that there were certain symptoms that were menopausal. I thought, like I think many of us do, that the hot flush is it. You wait for the hot flush, then you know you've got the menopause, and then you're done for. But actually, there are anything from about 34 to 50 symptoms of menopause. You probably don't want me to list them all right now and test my brain fog. But, you know, they can range anything from anxiety, insomnia, mood swings. I mean, there's just so many. I think that ultimately, as women, we have to learn to listen to our bodies. And if we feel that something isn't right, then we have to be able to go. And, you know, I know Sheryl Sandberg said we should lean in, not just, though, in the boardroom. We should lean in our own lives. So when you go to the doctor and you say, listen, no, this isn't normal. I've had really bad mood swings. No, I'm not depressed. I don't want antidepressants, because you know that 1 in 3 of us will get prescribed antidepressants unless we say, you know what, no. The test to prove whether you're menopausal or not just doesn't work. It's a complete waste of time. I had 3 in the space of 3 months, and I was peri over it and just starting. So really what you have to do is listen to your own body and have the confidence to go in and say, I think that this could be the beginning of my menopause. And for many of us, all that's required, like my co-author, Alice, is only 48. I'm just thinking now, I think she might be 46. No, she's 48. And she'll kill me. And she went and got HRT from her doctor and has basically had the shortest menopause in the history of the universe, about 3 days. Felt brilliant. You know, it dealt with the symptoms that she was struggling with. And, you know, it's a happy story. But I think for most women, you know, we're not confident about talking about it. We're a little bit ashamed about it. Absolutely, that has to stop.
Mariella, listen, you answered so many points in that one answer, which was brilliant. And I'm so sorry we have run out of time. But can I just promise you that we are going to continue talking about this on Loose Women? It's not a subject that you kind of do and forget about. It's one we will come back to and come back to many times. So thanks very much today. Cracking the Menopause is Mariella's book. As I say, not a conversation that you just, you know, pick up and drop.